The rain hammered against the windows of the old Victorian house on Maple Street, each drop creating a rhythmic percussion that seemed to echo the tension building inside. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint mustiness of old wood and worn carpets, a smell that had defined the Henderson family home for 3 generations. Sarah Henderson stood in the kitchen, her fingers wrapped tightly around a ceramic mug that had long since gone cold, staring at her phone screen as if it might suddenly burst into flames. The notification had come through 20 minutes ago. A simple text from her younger brother Marcus. 3 words that had stopped her heart. Check your email. That was all. No explanation, no context, just those 3 words that now felt like a death sentence. Her hands trembled as she set down the mug, the ceramic clinking against the granite countertop with a sound that seemed too loud in the oppressive silence of the empty house. She could hear the old furnace kicking on in the basement, that familiar rumble and hiss that had been the soundtrack of her childhood. The warmth began to creep through the vents, but it did nothing to chase away the cold dread that had settled deep in her bones. Outside, the November wind howled through the bare branches of the oak tree her father had planted when she was born, 38 years ago. That tree had been his pride and joy, just like this house, just like the family legacy he had spent his entire life building. Sarah's finger hovered over her email app. She knew, somehow she just knew, that whatever was waiting for her in that inbox would change everything. The kitchen light flickered, a brief interruption in the steady glow of the overhead fixture, and in that moment of dimness, she saw her reflection in the darkened window. Tired eyes, lines of worry etched around her mouth, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. When had she started looking so much like her mother? The email loaded slowly, agonizingly. The subject line read simply, "You need to hear this." The sender was Marcus, and attached was an audio file. Her heart began to pound so hard she could feel it in her throat, hear it in her ears, a steady thump 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 that drowned out even the sound of the rain. Her finger tapped the attachment, and the file began to download. 15 seconds. 20. 30. Each second stretched into an eternity. Then it began to play. The audio quality was muffled at first, like someone had recorded it from inside a pocket or a purse. There was rustling, the sound of fabric moving, footsteps on hardwood floors. Then voices. Clear, unmistakable voices that she would have recognized anywhere. Her father's voice, strong and commanding even at 72 years old, the voice that had read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike and walked her down the aisle at her wedding. And the other voice. Her Aunt Linda. Her father's younger sister. Sarah's legs felt weak. She pulled out one of the kitchen chairs, the legs scraping against the tile floor with a screech that made her wince, and sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking so badly now that she had to set the phone on the table just to keep from dropping it. Her father's voice came through the speaker, tinny but clear. "I've made my decision, Linda. The will is final. Everything goes to Sarah. The house, the business, the investments. All of it." There was a pause, filled only with the sound of breathing and the distant ticking of what might have been a clock. Then Linda's voice, sharp and cold in a way Sarah had never heard before. "You cannot be serious, Robert. After everything I've done for you? After I gave up my own career to help you build that company? After I took care of Mom when she was dying while you were too busy making deals?" Sarah felt her stomach twist. She remembered those years, when her grandmother had been sick. Linda had been there, day after day, while her father had indeed been traveling constantly for work. But he had been building something, creating the foundation that had made all their lives comfortable. Hadn't he? Her father's voice again, quieter now but no less firm. You were compensated generously for your work at the company, Linda. And Mom left you the cottage and a substantial sum. This is about my estate, my legacy. Sarah is my daughter. She's the one who should carry on the Henderson name. The sound of a hand slamming on a surface made Sarah jump, even though she was listening to a recording of something that had already happened. Linda's voice rose, trembling with rage. The Henderson name? Is that what this is about? Your precious legacy? What about Marcus? He's your son, Robert. Your own flesh and blood. But I notice he's not getting the house or the business either. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus. Her baby brother, though at 34 he was hardly a baby anymore. It was true that the email had mentioned Marcus would receive a trust fund, a generous one, but not the house, not the controlling share of Henderson Industries. She had never questioned it, had assumed it was because she was older, because she had worked at the company since college, because she had always been the responsible one. Marcus has his trust fund, her father said, and there was something in his voice now, something hard and unyielding. He'll be well taken care of. But he's never shown any interest in the business, Linda. He's never shown interest in anything except spending money and chasing his next big idea that never pans out. I'm not going to hand him the keys to everything I've built just so he can run it into the ground. You mean like his father did? Linda's voice was venomous now, dripping with something that sounded almost like satisfaction. Oh yes, Robert. Let's talk about that, shall we? Let's talk about why you're really cutting Marcus out. Let's talk about why you've always treated him differently than Sarah. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sarah found herself leaning closer to the phone, as if proximity might help her understand what was happening, what Linda was implying. The rain outside had intensified, drumming against the roof like 1,000 tiny fingers demanding entry. I don't know what you're suggesting, Linda, but I'd be very careful if I were you. Her father's voice had gone cold, colder than Sarah had ever heard it. There was a warning there, a threat barely concealed beneath the surface. Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was a brittle, sharp sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. Oh, Robert. Always so good at pretending. Always so good at keeping up appearances. But I know the truth. I've always known. And if you don't change that will, if you don't give Marcus what he deserves, what he's entitled to as your son, then maybe it's time everyone else knew the truth too. What truth? Sarah whispered to the empty kitchen, but of course the recording couldn't answer her. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together what Linda could possibly mean. What secret could be so damaging that her father would change his will over it? You wouldn't dare, her father said, but there was something new in his voice now. Fear. Sarah had never heard her father sound afraid before, not when the company had nearly gone bankrupt in 2008, not when her mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer, not ever. But he was afraid now. Wouldn't I? Linda's voice was almost playful now, like a cat toying with a mouse. Try me, Robert. You have until the end of the month to make this right. Give Marcus his fair share. Give me what I'm owed for all those years of loyalty. Or I'll make sure that everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Everyone. Sarah, Marcus, the whole family, the board of directors, the press. Everyone. There was the sound of footsteps, quick and angry, then a door slamming. Then nothing but silence and the faint hiss of the recording. Sarah sat frozen, staring at her phone as the audio file ended and the kitchen seemed to close in around her. Her mind was spinning. What truth? What could Linda possibly know that would be worth blackmailing her father over? And why had Marcus sent this to her? Where had he even gotten this recording? The questions piled up, one on top of another, until she felt like she might suffocate under the weight of them. The sound of a car door slamming outside made her jump. She looked up, her heart racing, and saw through the rain-streaked window the familiar shape of her husband David's SUV in the driveway. The headlights cut through the gloom of the late afternoon, and she watched as he ran through the rain toward the house, his briefcase held over his head in a futile attempt to stay dry. The front door opened with a gust of cold, wet air. "Honey, I'm home," David called out, his voice cheerful and completely oblivious to the bomb that had just exploded in Sarah's world. His footsteps echoed through the hallway, and then he was in the kitchen, shaking water from his hair like a dog, grinning at her. You would not believe the traffic on the interstate. There was an accident near the exit and everything was backed up for miles. He stopped, his smile fading as he took in her expression. "Sarah? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came out. How could she even begin to explain? How could she tell him that everything she thought she knew about her family, about her father, about her inheritance, might be built on lies? She looked down at her phone, still sitting on the table, the screen now dark. David crossed the kitchen in 3 quick strides, his shoes squeaking on the tile, leaving wet footprints in his wake. He knelt beside her chair, his hand warm on her knee, his face creased with concern. "Sarah, you're scaring me. What happened? Is it your dad? Is he okay?" The mention of her father broke through the paralysis. She picked up the phone with trembling fingers and handed it to David. "Listen to this," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus sent it to me." David took the phone, his brow furrowed, and she watched his face as he listened to the recording. She saw the confusion, then the shock, then the anger that flashed across his features. When the audio ended, he set the phone down carefully, as if it might explode, and ran his hand through his damp hair. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "When was this recorded?" "I don't know." Sarah's voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and hollow. "Marcus didn't say. He just sent it with a message telling me to check my email." David stood up, pacing across the kitchen, his hands on his hips. Okay, let's think about this logically. First question, where did Marcus get this recording? Did he make it himself? Was he there? Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. There were only 2 voices. Dad and Linda. If Marcus had been there, they would have known. Someone else must have recorded it. Or maybe one of them recorded it themselves. But why?" David turned to face her, his expression intense. Why would either of them record that conversation? And if one of them did, how did Marcus get his hands on it? The questions hung in the air, unanswered and unanswerable. Sarah felt a headache beginning to pulse behind her eyes, a steady throb that matched the rhythm of the rain. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to think, trying to make sense of the senseless. Her phone buzzed on the table, making them both jump. Another text from Marcus. "We need to talk. All of us. Tonight. I'm calling a family meeting at Dad's house." 7 o'clock. Don't tell Dad I sent you the recording. Sarah showed the text to David, who read it and let out a low whistle. This is going to be a disaster, he said quietly. You know that, right? Whatever Linda is holding over your dad's head, whatever this secret is, it's about to come out. And when it does, it's going to tear your family apart. Sarah knew he was right. She could feel it in her bones, and the cold dread that had settled in her stomach. But what choice did she have? She couldn't ignore this. She couldn't pretend she hadn't heard that recording. She had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. I have to go, she said, standing up on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. I have to be there. David nodded, his jaw set. Then I'm coming with you. The drive to her father's house took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, and the windshield wipers beat a monotonous rhythm as they drove through the darkening streets. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, watching the familiar landmarks slide past. The coffee shop where she used to meet her father for breakfast every Sunday. The park where they had held the company picnic every summer. The church where her mother's funeral had been held 3 years ago. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. She could feel it, the way you can feel a storm coming even before the first drops of rain fall. Something fundamental had shifted, some invisible line had been crossed, and there was no going back. David reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. Whatever happens, he said softly, I'm here. We'll get through this together. She squeezed back, grateful for his presence, for his steady calm in the midst of the chaos swirling through her mind. They had been married for 12 years, and in all that time, he had never let her down. She hoped desperately that he wouldn't start now. Her father's house loomed out of the darkness, a sprawling colonial with white columns and black shutters that had always reminded Sarah of something out of a movie. The windows glowed with warm yellow light, and several cars were already parked in the circular driveway. She recognized Marcus's beat-up Honda, Linda's sleek Mercedes, and her Uncle Tom's pickup truck. The whole family was here, or at least most of them. David parked behind Marcus's car, and they sat for a moment in the sudden silence after the engine cut off. Sarah could hear her own breathing, quick and shallow, and the patter of rain on the roof. Through the front windows of the house, she could see shadows moving, people gathering in the living room. Ready? David asked, and Sarah almost laughed. How could anyone be ready for this? No, she said honestly. But let's go anyway. The front door was unlocked, as it always was when the family was gathering. Sarah pushed it open and was immediately enveloped by the familiar smells of her childhood home. Lemon furniture polish and old books, the faint scent of her father's cologne, the lingering aroma of whatever Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, had cooked for dinner. It smelled like safety, like home, like everything she was about to lose. There in the living room came a voice from the hallway, and Sarah turned to see Marcus emerging from the shadows. Her brother looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Marcus, Sarah started, but he held up a hand, cutting her off. Not yet, he said, his voice rough. Wait until everyone's together. I only want to do this once. He turned and walked toward the living room, and Sarah and David followed. The hallway seemed longer than usual, the walls pressing in, the family photos that lined the corridor watching them with silent judgment. Sarah's mother smiled out from a dozen frames, frozen in time, forever young and healthy and happy. What would she think of all this? What would she say if she were here? The living room was crowded. Her father sat in his usual armchair by the fireplace, where a fire crackled and popped, sending shadows dancing across the walls. He looked older than Sarah remembered, his face drawn and gray, his shoulders slumped. Linda stood by the window, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Uncle Tom, Linda's husband, sat on the couch, looking uncomfortable and confused. And there were others. Sarah's cousin Jennifer, Linda's daughter, perched on the arm of the couch. Marcus's girlfriend Tanya, hovering near the doorway as if ready to bolt at any moment. Everyone looked up as Sarah and David entered. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Sarah felt every eye on her, felt the weight of their expectations and their questions. "Good," Marcus said, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the tense silence. "Everyone's here. We can begin." "Begin what?" Sarah's father's voice was sharp, authoritative, the voice of a man used to being in control. "Marcus, what is this about? Why have you called us all here?" Marcus walked to the center of the room, and Sarah noticed for the first time that he was holding his phone. His hand was shaking slightly, making the screen flicker in the firelight. "Because," he said, his voice stronger now, "it's time for the truth to come out. All of it." Linda's face went pale. Robert's jaw clenched. The air in the room seemed to thicken, to become harder to breathe. "Marcus, don't," Linda said, but there was no force behind the words. She sounded defeated, resigned. "Don't what, Aunt Linda?" Marcus's voice was bitter. "Don't tell everyone what you told me? Don't share the recording you made? Don't expose the lies that this family has been built on?" Sarah's father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "What recording? What are you talking about?" Marcus held up his phone. "This recording," he said. "The one where you and Aunt Linda discuss your will. The one where she threatens to expose your secret unless you give me a bigger share of the inheritance. The one where she implies that there's something about me, about my parentage, that you've been hiding all these years." The room erupted. Jennifer gasped. Tom stood up, his face red. Sarah's father took a step toward Marcus, his hand outstretched as if to grab the phone. But Marcus stepped back, holding the device out of reach. "I sent a copy to Sarah," Marcus continued, his voice rising above the chaos. "And I've made several other copies too. So there's no point in trying to destroy this one. The truth is out there now. The only question is whether you're going to tell us what it means, or whether we're going to have to figure it out ourselves." Sarah's father sank back into his chair, and in that moment, he looked every one of his 72 years. His face was ashen, his hands trembling as they gripped the armrests. The fire cast flickering shadows across his features, making him look almost skeletal. "Robert," Linda said softly, and there was something in her voice that Sarah had never heard before. "Compassion, maybe. Or pity. You have to tell them. They deserve to know." "Know what?" Sarah heard herself say, her voice sounding strange and distant. "Dad, what is she talking about? What secret?" Her father looked up at her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw, so visceral, that Sarah felt her own eyes begin to burn with tears. "Sarah, sweetheart," he began, then stopped, his voice breaking. He cleared his throat, tried again. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. Something about your mother. About Marcus. The room had gone completely silent now. Even the fire seemed to have quieted, the log settling with barely a whisper. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, loud and insistent in her ears. Your mother and I, her father continued, his words coming slowly, painfully, as if each one was being dragged out of him against his will. We had problems. In our marriage. This was before you were born, Sarah. We were young, we were struggling. The business was just starting, and I was never home. I was always working, always traveling. And your mother, she was lonely. No, Sarah whispered, but she knew what was coming. She could feel it, like standing on train tracks and feeling the vibration of an approaching locomotive. She had an affair, her father said, and the words seemed to suck all the air out of the room. With my business partner, James Mitchell. It lasted about 6 months before I found out. We almost divorced. We went to counseling, we tried to work through it. And eventually, we did. We forgave each other. We moved on. And then you were born, Sarah, and everything seemed to get better. He paused, his eyes distant, lost in memories that Sarah couldn't see. We were happy again. Really happy. And then, for years later, your mother got pregnant again. With Marcus. Sarah felt David's hand on her shoulder, steadying her. She looked across the room at Marcus, who was standing frozen, his face white as paper, his eyes wide with shock and something that might have been horror. I never questioned it, her father said. Why would I? We were married, we were happy, Marcus was my son. But then, when he was about 2 years old, people started commenting on how different he looked from me. From you, Sarah. How he had James's eyes, James's smile. And your mother, she started acting strange. Guilty. Distant. Linda spoke up then, her voice quiet but clear. I was the one who figured it out, she said. I confronted Catherine. Your mother. And she admitted it to me. Marcus wasn't Robert's biological son. He was James Mitchell's. The words hung in the air like smoke, choking and inescapable. Sarah heard a sound, a low moan, and realized it was coming from Marcus. He had sunk down onto the couch, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. That's not possible, Marcus said, his voice muffled. That's not. You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. I wish it were, Linda said, and she sounded genuinely sad. But it's true, Marcus. Your mother told me herself. She made me promise never to tell anyone, especially not Robert. She said it would destroy the family. And I kept that promise, for years. Even after she died. But then Robert made that will, cutting you out of your rightful inheritance, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. Sarah's father's voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a knife. He's not cut out, Linda. He has a trust fund worth millions. He'll never want for anything. But he doesn't get the house, Linda shot back. He doesn't get the business. He doesn't get to be the heir, the one who carries on the Henderson legacy. Because he's not really a Henderson, is he, Robert? That's what you've always thought, deep down. That's why you've always treated him differently than Sarah. That's not true, Sarah's father said, but his voice lacked conviction. I've always loved Marcus. I raised him. I'm his father in every way that matters. Except biology, Linda said coldly. And apparently, that matters to you more than you want to admit. Sarah felt like the floor was tilting beneath her feet. She reached out blindly and found David's hand, gripping it so hard her knuckles went white. Marcus wasn't her full brother. He was her half-brother. Her mother had cheated on her father. Her entire family history, everything she thought she knew, was a lie. Did Mom know? Sarah heard herself ask. Did she know that you knew? Her father shook his head slowly. No. I never told her that Linda had told me. I never confronted her about it. I tried to love Marcus the same as I loved you. I tried not to let it matter. But Linda's right. It did matter. It does matter. And I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. Marcus looked up, and the expression on his face was one of pure anguish. You've known all this time? All my life, you've known I wasn't really your son, and you never said anything? You just let me believe, let me think that I was part of this family, that I belonged here. You do belong here, Sarah's father said desperately. You're my son. I raised you. I love you. But you don't trust me, Marcus said, his voice breaking. You don't trust me enough to leave me the business. You don't think I'm good enough to carry on the Henderson name. Because I'm not really a Henderson at all. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her family. Jennifer was crying quietly, her hands over her mouth. Tom looked shell-shocked, his face pale. Tanya had moved to Marcus's side, her hand on his shoulder, her expression fierce and protective. And Linda looked almost satisfied, as if some long-held grievance had finally been addressed. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce. She turned to Linda, her voice shaking with rage. How could you? How could you use this to blackmail Dad? How could you threaten to expose this secret, knowing what it would do to Marcus, to all of us? Linda's expression hardened. Don't you dare judge me, Sarah. I gave up everything for this family. I worked at that company for 20 years, helping your father build it into what it is today. And what did I get? A pat on the head and a gold watch when I retired. Meanwhile, you, who've only worked there for 15 years, you get everything. The house, the business, the legacy. Just because you're Robert's biological daughter. So this is about money? Sarah's voice was incredulous. You're willing to destroy this family over money? It's not about money, Linda snapped. It's about fairness. It's about recognition. It's about Marcus getting what he deserves, what his real father would have wanted him to have. His real father, Sarah's father said, his voice heavy with bitterness, abandoned him before he was even born. James Mitchell wanted nothing to do with Marcus. He left the company, left the state, started a new life somewhere else. I'm the one who raised Marcus. I'm the one who paid for his education, who taught him to ride a bike, who sat up with him when he was sick. I'm his real father. But you don't trust him, Linda repeated. You don't think he's capable of running the business. Because he's not, Sarah's father said, and the bluntness of the statement made everyone flinch. It's not about biology, Linda. It's about capability. Marcus has never shown any interest in the business. He's never held down a job for more than a year. He's brilliant and creative and I love him, but he's not the right person to run Henderson Industries. Sarah is. She's earned it. Marcus stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger and hurt. So that's it, then. I'm not good enough. I've never been good enough. And now I know why. Because I'm not really your son. I'm the product of Mom's affair, the reminder of her betrayal. And you've been punishing me for it my whole life. That's not true, Sarah's father said, standing as well, reaching out toward Marcus. Marcus, please, you have to understand. But Marcus backed away, shaking his head. No. No, I don't have to understand anything. I don't have to stay here and listen to this. I don't have to be part of this family anymore. He turned and strode toward the door, Tanya hurrying after him. Sarah called out, "Marcus, wait," but he didn't stop. The front door slammed with a sound like thunder, and then he was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt like the aftermath of an explosion. Sarah stood frozen, torn between running after her brother and staying to confront her father and aunt. The room felt too small, too hot, despite the cold rain still pattering against the windows. The fire in the fireplace seemed to mock them with its cheerful warmth, as if nothing had changed, as if the world hadn't just been turned upside down. "I need to go after him," Sarah said, but her father's voice stopped her. "Let him go," he said wearily, sinking back into his chair. "He needs time. We all need time." "Time?" Sarah whirled on him, her anger finding a new target. "Time for what, Dad? Time to process the fact that you've been lying to us our entire lives? Time to come to terms with the fact that our family is built on secrets and betrayal?" Her father flinched as if she had struck him. "Sarah, please. Try to understand. I was trying to protect you. Both of you. I thought if I never acknowledged it, if I just loved Marcus and treated him as my son, it wouldn't matter. The biology wouldn't matter. But it did matter," Sarah said, and she could hear the tears in her own voice now. "It mattered to you. That's why you made the will the way you did. That's why Marcus always felt like he was on the outside looking in. Because he was. Because you never really saw him as your son." "That's not fair," her father said, but there was no heat in his words. He sounded defeated, broken. "Fair?" Linda's voice cut through the room like a whip. "You want to talk about fair, Robert? Let's talk about fair. Let's talk about how I devoted my life to helping you build that company, and you repaid me by forcing me into early retirement when I turned 60. Let's talk about how you promised me a partnership and then gave it to someone else. Let's talk about how you've always put yourself first, your legacy first, and everyone else can just fall in line or get out of the way." Sarah's father's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "I forced you into retirement because you were embezzling from the company, Linda. Don't think I didn't know. I had the accountants go over the books with a fine-tooth comb. You'd been skimming money for years. I could have had you arrested, prosecuted, sent to prison. Instead, I let you retire with your pension intact and your reputation unblemished. So don't you dare talk to me about fairness." The room went deadly silent. Tom stood up slowly, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Linda's face had gone white. "Robert," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Sarah's father reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He threw it onto the coffee table, where it landed with a soft thump. "That's a summary of the audit we conducted 5 years ago. $375,000, Linda. That's how much you stole from the company over a 10-year period. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but it added up. Tom picked up the paper with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the page. His face went from red to purple. "Linda?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is this true?" Linda's composure cracked. She sank down onto the window seat, her hands covering her face. "I needed the money," she said, her voice muffled. Tom's business was failing. We were going to lose the house. I was going to pay it back, I swear. I just needed time. "You stole from your own brother," Tom said, and the betrayal in his voice was palpable. "You stole from the family business. And you never told me. All those years, you let me think we were just barely scraping by, that I was failing as a provider, and all along you had been stealing money." "I was trying to protect you," Linda said, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want you to feel like a failure. I didn't want you to know how bad things had gotten." "So you became a thief instead," Tom said flatly. He dropped the paper back onto the table as if it burned his fingers. "I can't. I need to get out of here. Jennifer, we're leaving." Jennifer stood up, her face streaked with tears, and followed her father toward the door. Linda called after them, "Tom, please, wait," but they didn't stop. The door opened and closed, and they were gone. Linda sat alone on the window seat, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Sarah looked at her aunt, this woman she had known and loved her entire life, and felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. How had it come to this? How had one recording, one revealed secret, managed to destroy everything? "Why?" Sarah asked quietly. "Why did you make that recording, Linda? Why did you threaten Dad? Was it really about Marcus, or was it about revenge?" Linda looked up, her face blotchy and red from crying. "It was about both," she said hoarsely. "I was angry. I am angry. Robert has always had everything. The successful business, the perfect family, the respect of everyone in this town. And what do I have? A failed marriage, a daughter who barely speaks to me, and the knowledge that I'm a thief and a blackmailer." "You made your own choices," Sarah's father said, his voice hard. "I gave you opportunities, Linda. I brought you into the business, I paid you well, I trusted you. And you betrayed that trust. Just like you betrayed Marcus by using his parentage as a weapon." "I thought I was helping him," Linda said weakly. "I thought he deserved to know the truth. I thought he deserved his fair share." "His fair share," Sarah's father repeated bitterly. "He's getting millions of dollars, Linda. How is that not fair?" "Because it's not the same as what Sarah's getting," Linda said. "And you know it. The house, the business, the legacy. That's what matters to you, Robert. That's what's always mattered. And Marcus will never have it because he's not really yours." Sarah felt something break inside her. She looked at her father, this man she had idolized her entire life, and saw him clearly for the first time. Flawed. Human. Capable of pettiness and prejudice and all the ugly things she had never wanted to believe he could feel. "Is it true?" she asked him. "Is that really why you structured the will the way you did? Because Marcus isn't your biological son?" Her father was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled and popped, and somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. 8 o'clock. An hour ago, Sarah's life had been normal. Now, everything was in ruins. "I don't know," her father finally said, and the honesty in his voice was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Maybe. Subconsciously. I told myself it was about capability, about who was best suited to run the company. But maybe Linda's right. Maybe I've been punishing Marcus all along for something that wasn't his fault. For being a reminder of your mother's betrayal. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't bother to wipe them away. Mom loved you, she said. I know she did. Whatever happened with James Mitchell, whatever mistakes she made, she loved you. She chose you. She stayed with you. I know, her father said, and his voice was thick with emotion. And I loved her. God, I loved her so much. But I never forgot. I never stopped wondering if she regretted her choice. If she wished Marcus's father had stayed. If she looked at Marcus and saw him instead of me. The pain in his voice was so raw that Sarah felt it like a physical blow. She crossed the room and knelt beside his chair, taking his hand in hers. It was cold and papery, the hand of an old man. When had her father gotten so old? Dad, she said softly. You have to fix this. You have to talk to Marcus. You have to make this right. How? Her father asked, and he sounded lost, like a child. How do I fix this, Sarah? How do I undo 34 years of damage? You start by telling him the truth, Sarah said. All of it. Not just about Mom's affair, but about how you felt. About your fears and your doubts and your mistakes. You tell him that you're sorry. And then you change the will. Her father's head snapped up. What? Change the will, Sarah repeated. Give Marcus an equal share. Not because Linda's blackmailing you, but because it's the right thing to do. Because he's your son, Dad. Biology doesn't change that. You raised him. You loved him. He deserves to be treated the same as me. But the business, her father started, and Sarah cut him off. We'll figure out the business, Sarah said firmly. Maybe Marcus doesn't want to run it. Maybe he'd be happy to sell his share to me, or to an outside investor. But he should have the choice. He should have the same options I have. Anything less is just, it's wrong, Dad. You know it's wrong. Her father looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah saw something shift in his expression. Acceptance, maybe. Or resignation. When did you get so wise? He asked softly. I learned from you, Sarah said, and managed a small, sad smile. The good parts, anyway. Her father squeezed her hand, then slowly got to his feet. He looked across the room at Linda, who was still sitting on the window seat, watching them with red-rimmed eyes. You got what you wanted, Linda, he said quietly. I'll change the will. Marcus will get an equal share. But understand this. You and I are done. No more family dinners. No more holidays together. You used my son as a pawn in your game of revenge, and I will never forgive you for that. Linda nodded slowly, as if she had expected nothing less. I understand, she said. For what it's worth, Robert, I am sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted you to see. To understand what it feels like to be on the outside. To be the one who's not quite good enough. I do understand, Sarah's father said. Better than you know. And he turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Sarah stood up, her legs stiff from kneeling. She looked at Linda, this woman who had been like a second mother to her, and felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Anger, yes. Betrayal, certainly. But also pity. Linda had destroyed her own life in pursuit of revenge, and for what? A change to a will that might never even matter, depending on how long her father lived? You should go, Sarah said quietly. I don't think there's anything left to say. Linda stood up slowly, gathering her purse and coat. At the door, she paused and looked back at Sarah. Take care of him, she said. Your father. He's not as strong as he pretends to be. None of us are, Sarah said, and Linda nodded and left. Sarah stood alone in the living room, listening to the sound of Linda's car starting up and driving away. The fire had burned down to embers, casting a faint red glow across the room. She felt David's presence before she heard him. He had been standing in the doorway the whole time, silent and supportive, giving her space to handle her family's crisis. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, and Sarah finally let herself break down. She sobbed into his chest, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body, while he held her and stroked her hair and murmured soothing nonsense words. When the storm of tears finally passed, Sarah pulled back and wiped her eyes. I need to find Marcus, she said. I need to talk to him. David nodded. I'll drive, he said. They found Marcus at his apartment, a small one-bedroom in a converted warehouse downtown. The building was old and industrial, with exposed brick walls and high ceilings and the kind of character that real estate agents called charming and everyone else called drafty. Sarah had only been here a handful of times. Marcus had always preferred to meet at restaurants or coffee shops, and now Sarah wondered if it was because he felt ashamed of his modest living situation compared to her sprawling suburban house. The guilt twisted in her stomach as David knocked on the door. There was a long pause, and then the door opened a crack. Tanya peered out, her expression wary. He doesn't want to see anyone, she said. Please, Sarah said. I'm his sister. I need to talk to him. Half-sister, came Marcus's voice from inside the apartment, bitter and sharp. Might as well get the terminology right. Tanya looked back over her shoulder, then at Sarah. She sighed and opened the door wider. 5 minutes, she said. That's all I'm giving you. Sarah stepped inside, David following close behind. The apartment was small but cozy, with mismatched furniture and artwork covering every available wall space. Marcus sat on the couch, a beer in his hand, his eyes fixed on the blank television screen. Marcus, Sarah said softly, sitting down in the armchair across from him. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what? Marcus asked, still not looking at her. Sorry that I'm not really your brother? Sorry that Dad's been lying to me my whole life? Sorry that I'm the product of an affair and everyone knew except me? I didn't know, Sarah said. I swear, Marcus. I had no idea. If I had known, I would have told you. Would you? Marcus finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes made Sarah's heart ache. Or would you have kept the secret too, to protect Dad, to protect the family reputation? I don't know, Sarah admitted. Maybe. But I'd like to think I would have done the right thing. The right thing, Marcus repeated with a hollow laugh. What's the right thing, Sarah? Telling me that the man I thought was my father isn't really my father? That my real father wanted nothing to do with me? That I'm the result of my mother's mistake? You're not a mistake, Sarah said fiercely. You're my brother. Your dad's son. Biology doesn't change that. It changed everything for Dad, Marcus said. It changed how he saw me, how he treated me. I always knew something was different. I always felt like I was on the outside, like I didn't quite fit. Now I know why. Dad's going to change the will, Sarah said. I talked to him. You're going to get an equal share. The house, the business, everything. Marcus shook his head. I don't want it, he said. Not like this. Not because Linda blackmailed him into it. Not because you guilt him into doing the right thing. I don't want his money or his business or his legacy. I don't want anything from him. Marcus, don't say that, Sarah pleaded. You're hurt and angry, and you have every right to be. But don't throw away your future because of it. My future? Marcus laughed again, that same bitter, hollow sound. What future, Sarah? The one where I run a company I have no interest in? The one where I live in Dad's shadow for the rest of my life? The one where everyone knows I'm only there because of guilt and obligation? Then do something else, Sarah said. Sell your share of the business. Use the money to start your own company, to pursue your own dreams. But don't cut yourself off from the family. Don't cut yourself off from me. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more vulnerable. Did Mom ever say anything to you? About James Mitchell? About the affair? Sarah shook her head. No. She never mentioned him. I don't think I ever even heard his name until tonight. I looked him up, Marcus said. After I got the recording. James Mitchell. He lives in Seattle now. He's a software engineer. He's married, has 2 kids. A whole other family that has nothing to do with me. Have you thought about contacting him? Sarah asked carefully. Marcus shrugged. What would I say? Hi, I'm the son you never wanted? I'm the mistake you left behind? No thanks. I'd rather not add another rejection to the list. You don't know that he'd reject you, Sarah said. Maybe he doesn't even know you exist. Maybe Mom never told him she was pregnant. Or maybe he knew and didn't care, Marcus said. Either way, I'm not interested in finding out. I've had enough revelations for one lifetime. Tanya came over and sat down next to Marcus, taking his hand. Whatever you decide, she said softly, I'm with you. If you want to reach out to your biological father, I'll support you. If you want to cut ties with your family, I'll support that too. But I think you should take some time before making any big decisions. You're in shock right now. We all are. She's right, David said, speaking up for the first time. This is a lot to process. Don't make any decisions tonight that you might regret tomorrow. Marcus looked around at the 3 of them, and some of the hardness in his expression softened. You're right, he said. I need time. I need to think. But Sarah, I want you to know, none of this changes how I feel about you. You're still my sister. You've always been there for me, and I know you always will be. Sarah felt tears prickling at her eyes again. Always, she said. No matter what happens, no matter what secrets come out, you're my brother and I love you. They hugged, and for a moment, Sarah felt like maybe, just maybe, they could get through this. The family might be broken, but the pieces could be put back together. It would take time and effort and a lot of painful conversations, but it was possible. As Sarah and David drove home through the dark streets, the rain had finally stopped. The clouds were breaking up, revealing patches of starry sky. Sarah leaned her head against the window, watching the streetlights blur past. "What a mess," she said quietly. "Yeah," David agreed. "But you handled it well. You said the right things to your dad, to Marcus. You're holding this family together, Sarah." "I don't feel like I'm holding anything together," Sarah said. "I feel like I'm watching everything fall apart and I'm powerless to stop it." "You're not powerless," David said. "You convinced your dad to change the will. You got Marcus to agree to take some time before making any rash decisions. You're doing everything you can." Sarah wasn't so sure, but she appreciated David's faith in her. When they got home, the house was dark and cold. Sarah turned up the heat and made tea, and they sat together on the couch, not talking, just being present with each other. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Thank you for tonight. For making me see what I needed to do. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to change the will. And then I'm going to talk to Marcus. Really talk to him. Try to explain. Try to make amends. I don't know if he'll forgive me, but I have to try." Sarah showed the text to David, who nodded approvingly. "That's good," he said. "That's a start." But Sarah knew it was only a start. There was so much more to deal with. Linda's embezzlement. Tom and Jennifer's shattered trust. The question of whether Marcus would ever be able to have a real relationship with their father again. And underneath it all, the ghost of Sarah's mother, whose choices had set all of this in motion. Sarah thought about her mother, tried to imagine what she must have felt all those years ago. Young and lonely, married to a man who was never home, seeking comfort in the arms of someone else. It didn't excuse the affair, but it made it more understandable. More human. And then to get pregnant, to know that the child she was carrying might not be her husband's. The fear she must have felt. The guilt. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, no one would ever find out. That she could keep her family together through sheer force of will. But secrets have a way of coming out. Sarah knew that now. No matter how carefully you bury them, no matter how many years pass, the truth always finds a way to surface. And when it does, it leaves destruction in its wake. The next few weeks were difficult. Sarah's father met with Marcus several times, long conversations that left both of them emotionally drained. Marcus agreed to accept the revised will, but he made it clear that he had no interest in being involved with Henderson Industries. He would sell his share to Sarah, who would become the sole owner of the company. Linda and Tom separated. Jennifer moved in with Tom and refused to speak to her mother. Linda sold her house and moved to Florida, as far away from the family as she could get. Sarah heard through the grapevine that Linda had started seeing a therapist, trying to work through the anger and resentment that had driven her to such destructive actions. Sarah threw herself into work, learning everything she could about running the company. It was overwhelming at times, but it also gave her a sense of purpose. This was her legacy now, her responsibility. She was determined to honor it, to build on what her father had created and make it even better. Marcus, meanwhile, used his share of the trust fund to start his own business. A small design studio that specialized in branding and marketing for startups. It was exactly the kind of creative, flexible work that suited him, and he threw himself into it with an enthusiasm Sarah had never seen before. It was as if being freed from the expectation of taking over Henderson Industries had allowed him to finally figure out who he really was and what he really wanted. 6 months after the night of the family meeting, Sarah stood in her father's study, looking at the portrait of her mother that hung above the fireplace. It had been painted when her mother was in her 40s, still beautiful, still vibrant, years before the cancer that would eventually take her life. "I wish you were here," Sarah said softly to the portrait. "I wish I could ask you about all of this. About James Mitchell, about the affair, about how you lived with the secret for so many years. I wish I could understand." The portrait, of course, didn't answer. But Sarah felt a sense of peace settling over her anyway. Her mother had been human, flawed and complicated and capable of mistakes. Just like Sarah's father. Just like Linda. Just like all of them. The door opened behind her, and Sarah turned to see Marcus standing in the doorway. He looked better than he had in months. Healthier. Happier. More at peace. "Hey," he said. "Dad said you were in here. I wanted to talk to you about something." Sarah gestured to the chairs by the fireplace, and they sat down. "What's up?" she asked. Marcus took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about James Mitchell," he said. "My biological father. And I've decided I want to reach out to him. Not to have a relationship necessarily, but just to, I don't know, get some answers. Understand where I came from." Sarah nodded slowly. "That makes sense," she said. "Do you want me to come with you?" Marcus smiled. "Thanks, but no. This is something I need to do on my own. But I wanted you to know. And I wanted to ask, are you okay with it? I know it might feel like I'm betraying Dad or Mom's memory or something." Sarah reached over and took his hand. "Marcus, you're not betraying anyone. You have a right to know your biological father, to understand that part of your history. Dad will understand. And Mom, wherever she is, I think she'd understand too." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, looking at their mother's portrait. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking about that recording. The one Linda made. In a weird way, I'm almost grateful for it." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Grateful? How?" "Because it forced everything out into the open," Marcus said. "All the secrets, all the lies, all the resentment that had been building up for years. It was painful, God knows it was painful. But now we can deal with it. Now we can move forward. If Linda had never made that recording, I might have gone my whole life never knowing the truth. Always feeling like something was off but never understanding why." Sarah considered this. "I guess you're right," she said. "As much as I hate what Linda did, as much as I hate how it all came out, at least now we know. At least now we can be honest with each other." "Exactly," Marcus said. "No more secrets. No more lies. Just the truth, messy and complicated as it is." Sarah's father appeared in the doorway, looking between his two children with an expression of cautious hope. "Am I interrupting?" he asked. "No, Dad," Sarah said. "Come in. We were just talking about Mom." Her father came into the room and stood in front of the portrait, his hands in his pockets. "I miss her every day," he said quietly. "Even with everything that happened, even knowing about the affair, I miss her. She was the love of my life." She loved you too, Dad, Marcus said, and there was no bitterness in his voice now, just compassion. Whatever mistakes she made, whatever happened with James Mitchell, she chose you. She stayed with you. She built a life with you. Sarah's father turned to look at Marcus, and there were tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for letting my own hurt and insecurity affect how I saw you. You are my son, Marcus. You always have been. Biology doesn't change that. Marcus stood up and crossed the room, and father and son embraced. Sarah watched them, tears streaming down her own face, and felt something shift. The family wasn't healed, not completely. There were still wounds that needed time to close, still conversations that needed to be had. But they were on the right path. They were moving forward together. That evening, Sarah and David hosted a small dinner at their house. Just the four of them, Sarah and David, Marcus and Tanya. It was the first time they had all been together socially since the night of the revelation, and there was a tentative quality to the gathering, as if they were all testing the waters, seeing if they could reclaim some sense of normalcy. Sarah had cooked her mother's famous lasagna, following the recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations of Henderson women. The kitchen smelled of garlic and tomatoes and melting cheese, warm and comforting and familiar. As she pulled the dish out of the oven, she felt her mother's presence so strongly it was almost like she was standing right there beside her. This looks amazing, Tanya said, helping Sarah carry dishes to the dining room table. You'll have to teach me how to make it. I'd be happy to, Sarah said, and meant it. Tanya had been a rock for Marcus through all of this, steady and supportive and exactly what he needed. Sarah was grateful to have her as part of the family. They sat down to eat, and for a while, conversation was light and easy. They talked about Marcus's new business, which was already getting buzz in the local startup community. They talked about Sarah's plans for Henderson Industries, the new initiatives she wanted to implement, the changes she wanted to make. They talked about David's work, about Tanya's graduate program, about everything except the elephant in the room. But eventually, inevitably, the conversation turned to more serious matters. Marcus set down his fork and looked at Sarah. I'm going to Seattle next week, he said. To meet James Mitchell. He agreed to see me. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. That's great, Marcus, she said. How are you feeling about it? Marcus shrugged. Nervous. Scared. Curious. All of the above. I don't know what I'm expecting. I don't even know what I want from him. But I need to do this. I need to look him in the eye and ask him why. Why he left. Why he never tried to contact me. Why he just walked away. Those are fair questions, David said. And you deserve answers. I'm not sure I'll get them, Marcus said. But I have to try. Do you want me to come with you? Sarah asked again, and again Marcus shook his head. Thanks, but Tanya's coming with me. I need you here, holding down the fort. Making sure Dad doesn't spiral while I'm gone. Sarah smiled. I can do that. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where a fire crackled in the fireplace. Sarah poured coffee and brought out dessert, her mother's apple pie, another family recipe. As they ate, Marcus pulled out his phone. I want to show you something, he said. I found this in Mom's things. Dad gave me a box of her stuff, letters and photos and things she'd saved. And I found this. He held up his phone, showing them a photo of a letter. The handwriting was feminine and flowing, unmistakably their mother's. Sarah leaned in to read it. "My dearest Marcus," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and it means that somehow, some way, you've learned the truth about your father. About James Mitchell. I don't know how you found out. I prayed you never would. But if you have, then you deserve to know the whole story, not just the parts that other people remember or think they know." Sarah felt her breath catch. "Keep reading," she said to Marcus. Marcus scrolled down, and they read together. "I was 26 years old when I met James. Your father, Robert, and I had been married for 3 years, and we were struggling. He was working all the time, building the business, and I was lonely. I'm not making excuses. What I did was wrong. But I want you to understand the context. James was Robert's business partner. He was charming and attentive, and he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. We started an affair. It lasted 6 months. And then I got pregnant with you, Marcus, and I didn't know who the father was. Robert or James. I was terrified. I knew I had to end the affair, but I didn't know how to tell Robert. I didn't know if our marriage could survive. And then James made the decision for me. He told me he was leaving. He'd gotten a job offer in Seattle, and he was taking it. He said our affair had been a mistake, that he couldn't be with a married woman, that he needed a fresh start. I told him I was pregnant. I thought maybe it would change his mind, make him stay. But it didn't. He said he couldn't be sure the baby was his, and even if it was, he wasn't ready to be a father. He left 2 weeks later. I never saw him again. I decided not to tell Robert about the affair. I decided to let him believe you were his son, Marcus, because in every way that mattered, you were. He was there for your birth. He held you when you cried. He taught you to walk and talk and ride a bike. He loved you. He loves you still, I hope, if he's still alive when you read this. But I need you to know something, Marcus. Even if Robert isn't your biological father, even if James Mitchell's DNA runs through your veins, you are Henderson. You are my son. You are Robert's son. You are Sarah's brother. Biology is just biology. Family is what you make it. Family is the people who show up, who stay, who love you even when it's hard. I'm sorry I kept this secret from you. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, whatever way that was. But I hope you can understand why I did it. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect our family. I was trying to hold everything together. I love you, Marcus. I have always loved you. And I hope, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you know that you are enough. You have always been enough. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. All my love, Mom. The room was silent when Marcus finished reading. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, and she saw that Marcus was crying too. Even David and Tanya had tears in their eyes. She knew, Sarah whispered. She knew all along that this might come out someday. And she wanted you to hear it from her. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He clutched the phone like a lifeline, like it was the last connection he had to his mother. She loved you so much, Sarah said. We all do. Nothing that's happened changes that. I know, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. I know. And reading this, Hearing her explain it in her own words, it helps. It doesn't make everything okay, but it helps. They sat together in the firelight, the four of them, bound by love and loss and the complicated truth of family. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows, but inside it was warm and safe and full of the kind of peace that comes after a storm. The following week, Marcus flew to Seattle. Sarah drove him to the airport, and they sat in the car for a few minutes before he had to go through security. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Sarah asked. "No," Marcus said honestly. "But I'm doing it anyway." "Call me after," Sarah said. "No matter what happens, no matter what he says, call me. I'll be here." "I know," Marcus said, and hugged her tight. "Thank you, Sarah. For everything. For being my sister. For standing by me. For not letting this tear us apart." "Always," Sarah said, and watched as he walked into the terminal, Tanya by his side. The next 24 hours were some of the longest of Sarah's life. She tried to work, tried to focus on the quarterly reports and budget projections that covered her desk, but her mind kept wandering. What was Marcus doing right now? Had he met James Mitchell yet? What were they saying to each other? Her phone rang at 8 o'clock that evening. Marcus's name flashed on the screen, and Sarah answered before the first ring had finished. "How did it go?" she asked without preamble. There was a long pause. Then Marcus's voice, tired but calm. "It was complicated. He's not what I expected." "Tell me everything," Sarah said, settling into her chair. Marcus took a deep breath. He's just a guy, you know? Not a villain, not a hero. Just a regular middle-aged guy with a wife and kids and a mortgage. He was nervous when we met. I could tell. His hands were shaking." "What did he say?" Sarah asked. "He apologized," Marcus said. "A lot. He said leaving was the biggest mistake of his life. He said he was young and scared and he didn't know how to handle the situation. He said he's thought about me over the years, wondered what kind of person I turned out to be. He said he's sorry he wasn't there." "Do you believe him?" Sarah asked. "I think so," Marcus said. "I mean, what reason would he have to lie now? It's been 34 years. The damage is done. I think he genuinely regrets his choices. But regret doesn't change the past. It doesn't give me back the father I never had." "No," Sarah agreed. "It doesn't. So what happens now? Are you going to stay in touch with him?" "Maybe," Marcus said. "We exchanged numbers. He wants to introduce me to his kids, my half-siblings. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. But maybe someday. We'll see." "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Honestly?" Marcus laughed, but it was a real laugh this time, not bitter or hollow. "I feel okay. I feel like I got the answers I needed. He's not some mythical figure anymore, not some mystery. He's just a guy who made some bad choices and has to live with them. Just like all of us." "Just like all of us," Sarah echoed. "I'm coming home tomorrow," Marcus said. "And when I get back, I want to have dinner with Dad. Just the two of us. I think we need to talk. Really talk. No more secrets, no more resentment. Just honesty." "I think that's a great idea," Sarah said. "He'll be so happy to hear from you." "Tell him I'll call him when I land," Marcus said. And Sarah? Thanks for being there. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, Sarah said. But I'm glad you didn't have to. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet of her office, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Marcus was okay. He was going to be okay. They were all going to be okay. It would take time, and there would be setbacks, but they were moving in the right direction. She picked up her phone and called her father. He answered on the second ring, his voice anxious. Sarah? Is everything all right? Have you heard from Marcus? He's fine, Dad, Sarah said. He just called me. The meeting with James Mitchell went well. He got the answers he needed. And he wants to have dinner with you when he gets back. Just the two of you. She heard her father's sharp intake of breath. Really? He said, and the hope in his voice was almost painful to hear. Really, Sarah confirmed. He wants to talk. He wants to move forward. He's ready, Dad. Thank God, her father said, and Sarah heard the tears in his voice. Thank God. I've been so worried. I thought I'd lost him forever. You haven't lost him, Sarah said gently. He's your son. He's always been your son. And he's ready to accept that now. To accept you. They talked for a few more minutes, and when Sarah finally hung up, she felt lighter than she had in months. The weight of secrets and lies and unspoken resentments had been crushing her, and now, finally, it was lifting. David came into the office, carrying 2 glasses of wine. I thought you might need this, he said, handing her one. You thought right, Sarah said, taking a grateful sip. Marcus called. It went well. He's coming home tomorrow. That's great news, David said, settling into the chair across from her desk. So what happens now? Now, Sarah said, we rebuild. We figure out how to be a family again. A real family, built on honesty and trust instead of secrets and lies. Sounds like a lot of work, David said with a smile. It will be, Sarah agreed. But it'll be worth it. Over the next few months, the Henderson family slowly began to heal. Marcus and his father had their dinner, a long, emotional conversation that lasted well into the night. They talked about the past, about the hurt and misunderstandings, about the love that had always been there even when it was hard to see. They talked about the future, about what kind of relationship they wanted to have going forward. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still old wounds that ached. But they were trying, and that was what mattered. Sarah took over as CEO of Henderson Industries, and under her leadership, the company flourished. She implemented new policies, expanded into new markets, and built a culture of transparency and integrity. She was determined that the company her grandfather had started and her father had built would be something she could be proud of, something that reflected the values she wanted to pass on to the next generation. Marcus's design studio took off beyond anyone's expectations. He had a natural talent for branding and a creative vision that clients loved. Within a year, he had hired 3 employees and was turning away work because he couldn't keep up with demand. He was happy in a way Sarah had never seen him before, fulfilled and confident and finally comfortable in his own skin. Linda remained in Florida, and while the family didn't see her, Sarah heard occasional updates through Jennifer. Linda was in therapy, working through her issues. She had gotten a job at a local nonprofit, using her business skills to help others instead of pursuing her own agenda. She had sent a letter to Marcus, apologizing for using him as a pawn in her vendetta against Robert. Marcus had read the letter but hadn't responded. He wasn't ready to forgive her yet, and maybe he never would be. That was his choice to make. Tom and Jennifer were doing well. Tom had started his own consulting business, and it was thriving. Jennifer had graduated from college and gotten a job at a marketing firm in the city. She and Marcus had reconnected, cousins who had always been close and were determined not to let their mother's actions destroy their relationship. 1 year after the night of the revelation, Sarah stood in the living room of her father's house, looking around at the family gathered there. It was Thanksgiving, and for the first time in a long time, there was genuine warmth and laughter filling the space. Marcus and Tanya were there, along with Marcus's father, who looked healthier and happier than he had in years. David was helping in the kitchen, along with Jennifer and Tom. Even James Mitchell was there, having flown in from Seattle at Marcus's invitation. It was awkward at first, having both of Marcus's fathers in the same room, but they were all adults, and they were all trying. Sarah watched as her father and James shook hands, two men who had once been business partners and rivals, now united by their love for the same young man. It wasn't comfortable, and it probably never would be, but it was civil. It was respectful. It was enough. Dinner was chaotic and loud and perfect. They ate too much and laughed too hard and told stories about Catherine, Marcus, and Sarah's mother, keeping her memory alive. Sarah looked around the table at these people, her family, broken and imperfect and trying so hard to do better, and felt a surge of love so strong it almost hurt. After dinner, as they were clearing the dishes, Marcus pulled Sarah aside. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for everything you did. For standing up to Dad, for making him change the will, for not letting this destroy us." "You don't have to thank me," Sarah said. "You're my brother. I love you. That's what family does." "I know," Marcus said. "But I'm thanking you anyway. Because of you, I have a relationship with Dad again. Because of you, I got to meet James and get some closure. Because of you, I'm happy. Really, truly happy." Sarah hugged him tight. "I'm happy too," she said. "We made it through, Marcus. We survived." "We did more than survive," Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. "We grew. We changed. We became better versions of ourselves. And that's because we faced the truth, as painful as it was. We didn't run from it. We didn't hide from it. We dealt with it." Sarah nodded, thinking about that night 1 year ago, when she had listened to that recording and felt her world crumbling around her. She had been so scared, so certain that the truth would destroy everything. But it hadn't. It had hurt, yes. It had been painful and messy and difficult. But in the end, it had set them free. "No more secrets," she said. "No more secrets," Marcus agreed. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Sarah and David were driving back to their house, Sarah thought about Linda. About the recording that had started all of this. About the choice Linda had made to expose the truth, even knowing the damage it would cause. In a strange way, Sarah realized Linda had done them all a favor. She had forced them to confront the lies and secrets that had been poisoning their family for decades. She had ripped off the bandage, and yes, it had hurt. But now the wound could finally heal properly. Sarah didn't know if she would ever forgive Linda for the way she had done it, for the blackmail and manipulation. But she could acknowledge that the outcome, painful as it had been, was ultimately for the best. "Do you think we'll ever see Linda again?" David asked, as if reading her thoughts. "I don't know," Sarah said honestly. "Maybe. Someday. If she does the work, if she really changes, maybe we can find a way to let her back into our lives. But it's not up to me. It's up to Dad and Marcus. They're the ones she hurt the most." "Fair enough," David said. He reached over and took her hand. "I'm proud of you, you know. For how you handled all of this. For being the glue that held your family together." "I didn't do it alone," Sarah said. "You were there every step of the way. I couldn't have gotten through it without you." "That's what marriage is," David said with a smile. "Being there for each other, especially when things get hard." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, and Sarah found herself thinking about her mother again. About the letter she had written to Marcus, the one where she had tried to explain her choices and express her love. Sarah wondered if her mother had written a letter for her too, somewhere in that box of keepsakes. She made a mental note to ask her father about it. When they got home, Sarah went straight to her office and pulled out a notebook. She had been thinking about writing down everything that had happened, creating a record for future generations. Not to air dirty laundry or assign blame, but to document the truth. To make sure that her children, if she and David ever had any, would know the real story of their family. The good and the bad, the triumphs and the mistakes. She started writing, and the words flowed easily. She wrote about the recording, about the family meeting, about the revelations and the pain and the slow, difficult process of healing. She wrote about her mother's affair and her father's hurt and Marcus's journey to find his biological father. She wrote about Linda's betrayal and her own struggle to hold the family together. And as she wrote, she realized something. This story, painful as it was also a story of love. Love that survived betrayal. Love that transcended biology. Love that was strong enough to weather the worst storms and come out stronger on the other side. Her family wasn't perfect. They had made mistakes, kept secrets, hurt each other in ways that would take years to fully heal. But they had also fought for each other. They had chosen each other, again and again, even when it would have been easier to walk away. That was what family meant, Sarah realized. Not shared DNA or legal documents or inherited wealth. Family was the people who showed up. The people who stayed. The people who loved you even when they knew all your flaws and failures and secrets. Sarah wrote late into the night, and when she finally set down her pen, she felt a sense of peace. The story wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more difficult conversations, more moments of doubt and pain. But they would face them together, as a family. She closed the notebook and went upstairs, where David was already asleep. She slipped into bed beside him, and he automatically reached for her, pulling her close even in sleep. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself relax into his warmth, into the safety and comfort of their shared life. Tomorrow, she would call Marcus and check in. She would have lunch with her father and continue the ongoing conversation about the future of the company. She would respond to emails and attend meetings and handle all the mundane details of daily life. But tonight, she would rest. She would let herself feel grateful for what they had survived, for the family they were rebuilding, for the truth that had set them free. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. She stretched and got out of bed, padding downstairs in her pajamas to find David making breakfast. "Morning," he said, kissing her cheek. I made your favorite. Blueberry pancakes. You're the best, Sarah said, pouring herself a cup of coffee and settling at the kitchen table. What's the occasion? No occasion, David said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. I just thought we could use a nice, normal morning. No drama, no revelations, just breakfast and coffee and each other. Sounds perfect, Sarah said, and meant it. They ate breakfast together, talking about nothing in particular. David's upcoming business trip. The book Sarah was reading. The weird noise the dishwasher was making. Normal, everyday things that felt precious after the chaos of the past year. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Morning, sis. Just wanted to say I love you. Hope you have a great day. Sarah smiled and texted back. Love you too. Talk later? Definitely, came the reply. It was such a simple exchange, but it filled Sarah with warmth. A year ago, she had been terrified that the revelation of the family secrets would destroy her relationship with Marcus. But instead, it had made them closer. They talked more now, really talked, about their feelings and fears and hopes. They didn't take each other for granted anymore. Later that day, Sarah went to visit her father. She found him in his study, going through old photo albums. He looked up when she came in, his face lighting up with a smile. Sarah, sweetheart, he said. I was just thinking about you. Come look at these. Sarah sat down beside him and looked at the photos spread across the desk. Pictures of her as a baby, as a toddler, as a young girl. Pictures of Marcus at various ages. Pictures of their mother, young and beautiful and full of life. I've been thinking about your mother a lot lately, her father said quietly. About the choices she made, the secrets she kept. I was angry at her for so long. Even after she died, I was angry. But I'm not anymore. What changed? Sarah asked. I realized that she was just human, her father said. She made mistakes, yes. But she also loved us. She loved me, she loved you, she loved Marcus. And she did the best she could with an impossible situation. I can't fault her for that. Sarah squeezed his hand. I think she'd be proud of us, she said. Of how we've handled all of this. Of how we've come together instead of falling apart. I hope so, her father said. God, I hope so. They sat together in comfortable silence, looking at the photos, remembering. After a while, Sarah's father spoke again. I've been thinking about the company, he said. About the future. And I want you to know, Sarah, I have complete faith in you. You're going to do amazing things with Henderson Industries. You're going to take it places I never could have imagined. Thank you, Dad, Sarah said, feeling tears prick at her eyes. That means everything to me. And Marcus, her father continued. I'm so proud of what he's built with his design studio. He's found his own path, his own success. He doesn't need Henderson Industries. He's creating his own legacy. He is, Sarah agreed. And he's happy. Really happy. That's all I ever wanted, her father said. For both of you to be happy. I know I made mistakes. I know I let my own issues affect how I treated Marcus. But I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to be the father you both deserve. You are, Sarah said firmly. You're doing great, Dad. We all are. Her father pulled her into a hug, and Sarah let herself be held, feeling like a child again. Safe and loved and protected. When they pulled apart, her father wiped his eyes and laughed self-consciously. "Look at me, getting all emotional," he said. "It's okay to be emotional," Sarah said. "It's okay to feel things. That's what we're learning, right? To be honest about our feelings instead of hiding them away." "When did you get so wise?" her father asked, echoing the words he had said a year ago. "I learned from the best," Sarah said, and they both smiled. Over the following months, life settled into a new normal. Sarah threw herself into her work at Henderson Industries, implementing changes and innovations that positioned the company for long-term success. She hired new talent, expanded into emerging markets, and built partnerships with other companies that shared her values. Marcus's design studio continued to grow. He hired more employees, moved into a bigger office space, and started taking on bigger, more prestigious clients. He and Tanya got engaged, and the family celebrated with a party at Sarah's house. Even James Mitchell sent a congratulatory message, which Marcus appreciated even if their relationship was still tentative and undefined. Sarah's father gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the company, trusting Sarah to handle things. He spent more time on hobbies he had neglected for years. He took up painting, joined a book club, traveled to places he had always wanted to see. He seemed lighter, happier, freed from the burden of secrets he had carried for so long. And slowly, carefully, the family began to discuss the possibility of reaching out to Linda. It was Marcus who brought it up first, at a family dinner 6 months after Thanksgiving. "I've been thinking about Aunt Linda," he said, and everyone at the table went quiet. "I know what she did was wrong. I know she hurt all of us. But I also know that she was hurting too. And I think, maybe, we should consider giving her a chance to make amends." Sarah's father's jaw tightened. "Marcus, I don't know if I can do that. What she did, using you as leverage, threatening to expose our family secrets, that's not something I can easily forgive." "I'm not asking you to forgive her," Marcus said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I am asking you to consider the possibility that people can change. That they can grow and learn from their mistakes. Isn't that what we've all been doing this past year?" Sarah watched her father struggle with this. She could see the conflict on his face, the desire to hold on to his anger warring with the knowledge that Marcus was right. "What do you think, Sarah?" her father asked, turning to her. Sarah took a deep breath. "I think Marcus has a point," she said carefully. "Linda made terrible choices. But she was also dealing with her own pain, her own sense of being overlooked and undervalued. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it does explain it. And if she's genuinely trying to change, if she's doing the work to become a better person, then maybe we owe it to ourselves to at least hear her out." Her father was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "I'll think about it. But I'm not making any promises." "That's all I'm asking," Marcus said. 2 weeks later, Linda called. Sarah answered, her heart pounding, not sure what to expect. "Sarah," Linda's voice was tentative, uncertain. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Jennifer gave me your number. I need to talk to you. To all of you. If you're willing to listen." Sarah looked at David, who was sitting beside her on the couch. He nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Sarah said. "I'm listening." Linda took a shaky breath. "I've been in therapy," she said. For the past year. Working through a lot of things. My anger at Robert, my resentment about the company, my own feelings of inadequacy. And I've come to realize that what I did, making that recording, threatening to expose the family secrets, that was wrong. It was cruel and manipulative, and I hurt people I love. I hurt you. I hurt Marcus. And I'm so sorry. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you for saying that, she said quietly. It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it. I know I can't undo the damage I caused, Linda continued. I know I can't take back the pain. But I want to try to make amends. I want to be part of this family again, if you'll have me. Not right away. I know I need to earn back your trust. But someday. Maybe. Sarah thought about it. About the year they had all been through, the pain and the healing and the growth. About the importance of forgiveness, not just for the person being forgiven, but for the person doing the forgiving. I think we can work toward that, Sarah said. It's going to take time. And you're going to have to prove that you've really changed. But I'm willing to try if you are. I am, Linda said, and Sarah could hear the tears in her voice. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. They talked for a while longer, and by the end of the conversation, Sarah felt cautiously optimistic. Linda sounded different. Humbler. More self-aware. Whether that would translate into lasting change remained to be seen, but Sarah was willing to give her a chance. She called Marcus and her father and told them about the conversation. Marcus was pleased. Her father was more reserved, but he agreed to consider meeting with Linda at some point in the future. It was a start. 3 months later, Linda came back to town for a visit. They met at a neutral location, a restaurant downtown, just the core family. Sarah and Marcus, their father, David and Tanya. Linda arrived early, looking nervous and older than Sarah remembered. The past year had clearly taken a toll on her. The meal was awkward at first, stilted conversation and long silences. But gradually, as they talked, some of the old warmth began to return. Linda told them about her life in Florida, her job at the nonprofit, her therapy sessions. She talked about the work she was doing to understand her own behavior, to recognize the patterns of resentment and entitlement that had led her to make such destructive choices. And she apologized. Not just once, but multiple times throughout the evening. To Marcus, for using his parentage as a weapon. To Sarah's father, for betraying his trust and threatening to destroy his reputation. To Sarah, for putting her in an impossible position. To all of them, for the pain she had caused. By the end of the evening, Sarah felt something shift. She wasn't ready to fully forgive Linda, not yet. But she was ready to move forward. To give Linda the chance to prove that she had changed. Her father, too, seemed to soften. As they were saying goodbye in the parking lot, he pulled Linda aside. Sarah watched from a distance as they talked, saw Linda break down in tears, saw her father awkwardly pat her shoulder. When they rejoined the group, both of them looked lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. It's going to be okay, Marcus said quietly to Sarah as they watched Linda drive away. We're going to be okay. Yeah, Sarah agreed. We are. And they were. Over the next year, Linda slowly reintegrated into the family. She came to visit every few months, always respectful of boundaries, always mindful of the damage she had caused. She and Tom began the process of reconciliation, attending couples therapy and working to rebuild their marriage. Jennifer, who had been the most hurt by her mother's actions, was the slowest to forgive, but even she eventually began to thaw. Sarah watched all of this with a sense of wonder. A year and a half ago, she had been convinced that the revelation of the family secrets would destroy them all. But instead, it had forced them to confront their issues, to communicate honestly, to choose each other over and over again. The family wasn't perfect. They still had disagreements and misunderstandings and moments of tension. But they dealt with them openly now, talking through problems instead of letting them fester. No more secrets. No more lies. Just honesty, even when it was hard. 2 years after the night of the revelation, Marcus and Tanya got married. It was a beautiful ceremony, held in the garden of Sarah's father's house, under the oak tree that had been planted when Sarah was born. The whole family was there. Sarah and David, their father, Tom and Linda and Jennifer. Even James Mitchell, who had flown in from Seattle and who stood awkwardly to the side, not quite sure where he fit but grateful to be included. Sarah stood beside Marcus as his best woman, watching as he and Tanya exchanged vows. She saw the love in his eyes, the happiness radiating from him, and felt her own eyes fill with tears. This was what it was all about. This moment of joy and celebration, made possible by all the pain and struggle that had come before. After the ceremony, during the reception, Sarah found herself standing with her father, watching Marcus and Tanya dance their first dance as a married couple. "He's happy," her father said softly. "Really, truly happy." "He is," Sarah agreed. "We all are." Her father turned to look at her. "I never thanked you," he said, "for what you did that night. For making me see what I needed to do. For holding this family together when it was falling apart. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." "You would have figured it out," Sarah said. "Eventually." "Maybe," her father said. "But I'm glad I didn't have to. I'm glad you were there to guide me. To guide all of us." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celebration unfold around them. Sarah saw Linda and Tom dancing, tentative but together. She saw Jennifer laughing with some of Marcus's friends. She saw James Mitchell talking with David, two men who had nothing in common except their connection to this complicated, messy, beautiful family. "This is what Mom would have wanted," Sarah said. "All of us together. Happy. Honest with each other." "Yes," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, it is." As the evening wore on and the celebration continued, Sarah found a quiet moment to step outside. She walked across the lawn to the oak tree, her mother's tree, and stood beneath its branches. The leaves rustled in the gentle breeze, and Sarah closed her eyes, feeling her mother's presence all around her. "We made it, Mom," she whispered. "We survived. We're okay. Better than okay. We're a family again. A real family." She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Marcus standing beside her. He didn't say anything, just stood with her, looking up at the tree. After a moment, their father joined them, and then David and Tanya. One by one, the family gathered under the oak tree, drawn together by some invisible force. They stood in a circle, holding hands, and Sarah felt the connection between them, strong and unbreakable. This was family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest and full of love. "To Catherine," Sarah's father said, raising his glass. "To the woman who brought us all together and who taught us, in her own complicated way, what it means to love." To Catherine, they all echoed and drank. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with light. Music drifted from the house, laughter and conversation and the sounds of celebration. Sarah looked around at the faces of her family, illuminated by the soft glow of the garden lights, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had been through hell and back. They had faced their worst fears and darkest secrets. They had been broken and had put themselves back together, stronger than before. And they had done it together. That was the real legacy, Sarah realized. Not the house or the business or the money. The real legacy was this: the ability to face the truth, no matter how painful. The courage to forgive, even when it seemed impossible. The strength to choose love over anger, connection over isolation, honesty over comfortable lies. This was what her mother had wanted for them. This was what her father had been trying to protect. And this was what Sarah would pass on to the next generation, whenever that time came. The knowledge that family wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, even when it was hard. It was about loving each other, flaws and all. It was about choosing each other, again and again, no matter what. As the night deepened and the celebration continued, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long and difficult, but they had made it. They were home. Not the house on Maple Street or the colonial with the white columns, but home in the truest sense. Home in each other. The leaked audio had exposed the truth about the will and torn the family apart. But in the end, it had also brought them back together, stronger and more honest than they had ever been before. The secrets were out. The lies were exposed. And in their place was something real and lasting and true. Sarah looked up at the oak tree, at the stars beyond, and smiled. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "For everything. For the love and the lessons and the legacy. We'll take it from here." And as the music played and the family danced and the night stretched on toward dawn, Sarah knew that they would. They would take the broken pieces of their past and build something beautiful. They would honor the truth, even when it hurt. They would love each other, fiercely and imperfectly and completely. They would be a family. Not in spite of their secrets and scars, but because of them. Because they had faced the darkness together and had chosen to walk back into the light. That was the real story. Not the betrayal or the blackmail or the revelation. But the healing. The forgiveness. The choice to love. And that story, Sarah knew, was just beginning. 3 years after the night that changed everything, Sarah sat in her office at Henderson Industries, looking at the framed photo on her desk. It was from Marcus's wedding, all of them gathered under the oak tree, smiling and happy and whole. She touched the glass gently, remembering that night, remembering the journey that had brought them there. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Guess what? Tanya's pregnant. You're going to be an aunt." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears. She texted back immediately. "Oh my God, Marcus, that's amazing. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you." "Thanks," came the reply. "We're telling Dad tonight. Want to come?" "Wouldn't miss it," Sarah typed back. That evening, the family gathered once again at her father's house. The same living room where the truth had been revealed, where their world had fallen apart. But it looked different now. Lighter. Warmer. Filled with photos and memories and the evidence of a family that had survived and thrived. Marcus and Tanya made their announcement, and the room erupted in celebration. Sarah's father cried openly, pulling Marcus into a fierce hug. Sarah hugged Tanya, already imagining the baby that would soon join their family. A new generation. A fresh start. As they celebrated, Sarah thought about the story she would tell this child someday. About their grandmother Catherine, who had made mistakes but had loved fiercely. About their grandfather Robert, who had learned to forgive and to see beyond biology to the heart of what family really meant. About their father Marcus, who had faced the truth about his parentage and had chosen to define himself not by his DNA but by his character and his choices. And about the night when a leaked audio recording had exposed secrets that had been buried for decades. About how the family had been torn apart and then, slowly, painfully, had come back together. About how they had learned that honesty, even when it hurt, was better than comfortable lies. About how love, real love, could survive anything. That was the legacy Sarah would pass on. Not just the business or the house or the money, but the knowledge that family was a choice. A daily choice to show up, to be honest, to forgive, to love. A choice that was sometimes easy and sometimes impossibly hard, but always, always worth it. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Sarah and David were driving back to their house, Sarah felt David's hand find hers in the darkness. "You're quiet," he said. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," Sarah said. "The past 3 years. How much has changed. How much we've all grown." "It's been quite a journey," David agreed. "Yeah," Sarah said. "And you know what? I wouldn't change it. Not the pain, not the struggle, not any of it. Because it brought us here. To this moment. To this family." David squeezed her hand. "That's a pretty enlightened perspective." Sarah laughed. "I've had a lot of therapy." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, and then Sarah spoke again. "David, I've been thinking. About us. About our future." "Okay," David said, a note of curiosity in his voice. "I want to have a baby," Sarah said. "I want to start our own family. I want to pass on everything I've learned, everything we've all learned, to the next generation." David pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to look at her, his eyes shining in the darkness. "Really?" he asked. "Really," Sarah confirmed. "I'm ready. Are you?" David pulled her into a kiss, and when they broke apart, he was grinning. "I've been ready for years," he said. "I was just waiting for you." Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Then let's do it," she said. "Let's start our family." And so they did. 9 months later, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. They named her Catherine, after Sarah's mother, and from the moment Sarah held her, she knew that everything they had been through, all the pain and struggle and growth, had been worth it. Marcus and Tanya's son was born 2 months later, and the cousins grew up together, as close as siblings. Sarah watched them play in the yard of her father's house, under the oak tree, and felt a sense of continuity, of legacy, of love passing from one generation to the next. Her father, now in his late 70s, was a devoted grandfather. He spent hours with the children, reading to them, playing with them, teaching them about the family history. But he was honest with them too, in age-appropriate ways. He didn't hide the mistakes or the struggles. He taught them that families were complicated, that people made mistakes, but that love and forgiveness could overcome anything. Linda, too, was part of the children's lives. She had fully reconciled with the family, and while things would never be exactly as they had been before, there was genuine warmth and affection between them now. She had learned from her mistakes, had grown and changed, and the family had learned to forgive. James Mitchell remained a peripheral figure, sending birthday cards and occasional emails but never quite integrating into the family. Marcus was okay with that. He had the father he needed in Robert, and James was simply a biological fact, not a relationship that required nurturing. As the years passed, Sarah continued to run Henderson Industries, building it into one of the most successful and respected companies in the region. But she never forgot the lessons she had learned that night 3 years ago. She ran the company with integrity and transparency, creating a culture where honesty was valued above all else. Marcus's design studio became one of the most sought after in the city, known for its creativity and innovation. He and Tanya expanded their family, having 2 more children, and Marcus proved to be an amazing father, present and engaged in a way that his own fathers, both of them, had struggled to be. And through it all, the family remained close. They had Sunday dinners together, celebrated holidays and birthdays, supported each other through challenges and triumphs. They had learned that family wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present. It was about choosing each other, again and again, no matter what. On the 5th anniversary of the night of the revelation, Sarah organized a family gathering. Everyone was there. Her father, now walking with a cane but still sharp and engaged. Marcus and Tanya and their 3 children. Sarah and David and their 2 daughters. Linda and Tom, their marriage stronger than it had been in years. Jennifer and her new husband. Even James Mitchell, who had flown in at Marcus's invitation. They gathered in the living room of her father's house, the same room where the truth had been revealed 5 years ago. But instead of anger and pain, the room was filled with laughter and love and the chaos of children playing. Sarah stood up and clinked her glass, calling for attention. "I wanted to say something," she said, and the room quieted. 5 years ago, we all gathered in this room and our family fell apart. Secrets were revealed, trust was broken, and we all wondered if we would ever be able to put the pieces back together. She looked around at the faces of her family, seeing the memories reflected in their eyes. "But we did put the pieces back together," she continued. "Not perfectly. Not without scars. But we did it. We chose honesty over comfortable lies. We chose forgiveness over resentment. We chose each other." Her father stood up, his eyes glistening with tears. "Sarah's right," he said. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything that mattered. But instead, I gained something I didn't even know I was missing. A real family. An honest family. A family built on truth and love instead of secrets and fear." Marcus stood up next. "I spent most of my life feeling like I didn't quite fit," he said. "Like I was on the outside looking in. And when I found out why, when I learned the truth about my parentage, I thought it would destroy me. But it didn't. It freed me. It allowed me to understand myself, to accept myself, to build a life that's authentically mine." Linda stood up, her voice shaking slightly. "I made terrible mistakes," she said. "I hurt people I love. I let my own pain and resentment turn me into someone I didn't recognize. But this family, this amazing, forgiving family, gave me a second chance. They let me prove that I could change, that I could be better. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." One by one, each member of the family stood and shared their thoughts, their gratitude, their love. And when they were done, they raised their glasses in a toast. To family, Sarah said. To truth. To forgiveness. To love. To family, they all echoed and drank. As the evening wore on and the children were put to bed and the adults settled into comfortable conversation, Sarah found herself once again standing under the oak tree. The stars were out, bright and clear, and the air was cool and fresh. She felt Marcus come up beside her, and then her father on her other side. The three of them stood together, looking up at the tree, at the stars beyond. "Mom would be proud of us," Marcus said softly. "Yes," Sarah's father agreed. "She would." They stood in silence for a moment, and then Sarah spoke. "You know, I used to think that the worst thing that could happen would be for our family secrets to be exposed. I thought it would destroy us. But I was wrong. The worst thing would have been to keep living the lie. To keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The truth set us free. Even when it hurt," Marcus added. "Especially when it hurt," Sarah's father said. "Because that's when we had to make a choice. To let the pain tear us apart or to use it to bring us closer together. And we chose each other. We chose love." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but they were good tears. Healing tears. She reached out and took both their hands, and they stood together under the oak tree, 3 generations of Hendersons, bound by blood and choice and love. The leaked audio had exposed the truth about the will and had torn the family apart. But in the end, it had also been the catalyst for healing, for growth, for becoming the family they were always meant to be. Not perfect, but real. Not without scars, but stronger for them. Not built on lies and secrets, but on honesty and love and the daily choice to show up for each other. That was the real story. Not the betrayal or the blackmail or the revelation, but what came after. The hard work of forgiveness. The courage to be honest. The strength to love even when it was difficult. The choice to be a family, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And as Sarah stood under the stars with her father and her brother, she knew that this was the legacy she would pass on to her daughters. Not just the business or the house or the money, but this. The knowledge that family was worth fighting for. That truth, even painful truth, was better than comfortable lies. That love, real love, could survive anything. The wind rustled through the leaves of the oak tree, and Sarah closed her eyes, feeling her mother's presence all around her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For the love and the lessons and the legacy. We're carrying it forward. We're making you proud." And in the rustling of the leaves, and the warmth of her father's hand and her brother's presence, and the laughter drifting from the house where her family gathered, Sarah heard the answer. A whisper of approval, of love, of peace. They had survived the storm. They had faced the truth. They had chosen each other. And in doing so, they had become more than just a family bound by blood or obligation. They had become a family bound by choice, by love, by the daily decision to show up and be present and be honest, no matter how hard it was. That was the real inheritance. Not the will or the money or the business, but this. The knowledge that they could face anything together. That they could survive any storm. That they could love each other through the worst and come out stronger on the other side. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at her father and Marcus, both of them gazing up at the tree with expressions of peace and contentment. This is it, she thought. This is what it's all about. Not the destination, but the journey. Not the perfection, but the effort. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to face it together. The house behind them glowed with warm light, filled with the people they loved. The oak tree above them stretched toward the stars, strong and enduring. And between them, the three of them, was a bond that had been tested and proven, broken and mended, stronger now than it had ever been. This was family. This was home. This was love. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. As they walked back toward the house together, arms around each other, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the journey they had been on. For the lessons they had learned. For the family they had become. The leaked audio had exposed the truth and torn them apart. But in the end, it had also brought them back together, transformed and renewed. They were not the same family they had been 5 years ago. They were better. Stronger. More honest. More loving. And that, Sarah knew, was the greatest legacy of all. Not what they had inherited, but what they had become. Not what they had been given, but what they had chosen. Not the family they were born into, but the family they had decided to be. Inside the house, the celebration continued. Children laughed and played. Adults talked and reminisced. The fire crackled in the fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And in the center of it all was love. Imperfect, complicated, hard-won love. But love nonetheless. Sarah looked around at the faces of her family, at the life they had built together from the ashes of their broken past, and smiled. This was it. This was everything. This was home. Not the house on Maple Street or the colonial with the white columns. Not the business or the money or the inheritance. But this. The people. The love. The choice to show up, day after day, year after year, no matter what. That was the real sweet home. Not a place, but a feeling. Not a building, but a bond. Not something you inherited, but something you built, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead and the family gathered close, Sarah knew that they had finally found it. The home they had been searching for all along. Not out there somewhere, but right here. In each other. In the love they shared. In the family they had chosen to be. Sweet home. Not perfect, but real. Not without pain, but full of love. Not the home they had started with, but the home they had built together, from truth and forgiveness and the daily choice to love each other, no matter what. And that, Sarah thought as she rejoined her family in the warm glow of the living room, was the greatest gift of all.